Check 1, 2.
Your recording has reached the maximum length. To replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3. For delivery options, press 4. To send a fax, press 6. To cancel this message, press star. To send this message now, press pound or hang up. To replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3. For delivery options, press 4. To send a fax, press 6. To cancel this message, press star. To send this message now, press pound or hang up. To replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3. For delivery options, press 4. To send a fax, press 6. To cancel this message, press star. To send this message now, press pound or hang up. Your message has been sent. Thank you for using T-Mobile voicemail. Goodbye.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Ildama?
Yes.
Hi, this is Russell. We have you connected with the board meeting now.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start in about 4 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I should turn my, oh, I guess I don't have to. Please work, please work. I don't rely on that anymore.
Good evening and welcome to all. I see we have some very special guests this evening, so we'll get started and I'll call this regular meeting of the Governing Board to order. Before we begin, let us all take just a moment of silence. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you'll all please stay standing, we're going to have the band here is going to play the national anthem for us, Star Spangled Banner. Nicely done. Thank you. All right, Mr. Quintana, are there any changes to the agenda?
Mrs. Wilson, members of the Governing Board, good evening. No changes at this time.
Okay, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. All right, before we begin, let the record show that we do have 3 board members present, and Mr. Aldama is joining us telephonically. No, I guess we don't need to approve an acting clerk there, Mr. Aldama. All right, do we have any call of the public? No? Okay. All right, we're going to move to item 4, Mr. Quintana.
Mrs. Wilson, members of the Governing Board, at this time, band students from Glendale American School will perform under the direction of Miss Corrine Grant. And we have some seats out front reserved for board members.
Good evening, everyone.
Or should I say good evening? Welcome to Hogwarts. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean, welcome to our Glendale District Board meeting. Applause. Did I surprise anybody? Well, I'd like to present the Glendale American Band. This is my advanced band, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and we've been working very hard on The Magic of Harry Potter, Fright Night Medley, and Thriller. Now, I know it's marked that we're going to play 3 separate songs, but we're actually not. We have melded them together, and you're going to recognize quite a few of the songs, I'm sure, and we hope you enjoy it. We always start first with a chorale to blend our sound and make sure we're playing in tune. So, thank you.
What? I know.
We wanted to play all the music, but we figured we couldn't take up 30 minutes of the board's time, so we kind of condensed it down. Hope you enjoy it. I'm going through it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, DC.
All right. You'll be able to advance your slides with this.
Okay.
I'll make it full screen when we start.
Awesome.
And then I'll grab your mic here in just a second.
Cool. They're going to reset all this, right? Or
I'm hoping so. I don't know. We'll find out.
Okay, so we got a little time.
Yeah. I'm sure you probably know it already, but to advance is the right button, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed your first page, I have to scroll a little bit, so when you guys, thank you. When you get down to 6 and 7, I'll go ahead and just scroll for you.
Okay, yeah, that's just like, this is the hair ones, I'm like, condensing. I got 10 minutes, I'm going.
Yeah, so. Not a worry. All right, and here's the microphone. When you're ready to unmute it, just a quick press, it'll switch from red to green, and then you can mute it the same way. You want to put that on it?
Cool, thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Monica said you would visit. Monica's like, Russell has somebody.
I've known her a couple of years now.
You got her, we're lucky we got her now.
She's great. Yep. There you go.
And I'll press the button on here.
Okay, so they're putting the podium up for you. They'll call you in.
We're not.
All right, we're going to go ahead with the rest of our meeting. So nice to see that many students involved in band. I always think, that's our future high school marching band. So, the bands I see, because I live not too far from Apollo, but I see the band every year. It's small and then it's big and then it's small and big. So I hope they all stay in it. It's wonderful. All right, we are still at item 4, and now we are at 4B.
Yes, Mrs. Wilson, members of the governing board. At this time, Mr. Colin Smith, 8th grade social studies teacher from Desert Spirit School, will present a report regarding the 7th and 8th grade student trip to Washington, D.C., and they took that trip on May 30th of this past school year. So, Mr. Colin Smith.
Nice and loud, cool. So it's going to be really quick. This is my usual parent presentation, so it usually takes a bit longer, so I'm going to condense it really quick just so I'm on limited time, and I know you guys have lots to do tonight. So if you want to kind of direct your attention that way, I'm going to be using the slideshow mostly up there. As far as where we're going, this is what the students see too in class. So we give them a cool presentation in class, and then if any students are really interested, they go home. I have some invitations and handouts that you guys can take home and look over on your time. If anybody's interested in some extra ones, I have some extra ones here with my helper, Alexia. Alexia went on the trip with us last year, so she's been there, done that. She really loved it. So I invited her to come up here and kind of convinced her to come up here. So she's here with us tonight, so you can ask her any questions if we have time. Clicking through Clue. Really quick, we go usually direct flight. We fly right from Arizona, straight out of Sky Harbor, right to DC. We've been in and out of all the airports. It's really great. What is it? It's a teacher chaperone educational trip. We get to see this history where it happened, especially the 8th grade history that we study in 8th grade here in Glendale. We do a lot of American Revolution, Constitution, and government, so it's really great for them to go and see all that. And they get to see monuments, museums, all that really great where it happened history with professional guides, which is awesome. The company that does it for us is World Strides. They're really great. They've been doing it for over 50 years. Each trip gets their own coordinator. Her name is Sophie Tiernan. She is amazing. She answers every question I can throw at her. She's got an answer back in like an hour usually. If I call her, she answers every time. So that's literally her only job, is to help our group go and do everything she can for us. They're nonprofit too, so they're not making money off of us, so they keep it as cheap as they can. When we're going this year, because we do have another trip planned in the works, we have 6 students signed up right now. We're trying to get a few more. Is we leave right after the end of school. So school ends this year on the 24th, we leave the 29th, and we come back on Friday, June 1st. That's just more for the kids, because a lot of them have never flown before, so it's a big experience for a lot of the kids. So they're like, what's the airport? Where is that? So I show them. We get to do, as I tell the kids, we pretty much do everything in that picture. It is a pretty much one trip does all visit to DC. After you go on this trip, you really don't need to go again unless you want to. As far as some things we do the Air and Space Museum. That's the pictures on the left. They have really cool examples of history, full-size airplanes and stuff in there. We've drove past a couple of the embassies, a couple of the religious areas, like the National Cathedral. We couldn't go in because it was still being fit, so it wasn't on our tour that year. That's from 2 years ago, as is that. That's a cool, really cool mural. The Capitol building, we do get to go in the Capitol building. They're not in session when we go, but we do get to see the actual original House of Representatives, which is in the bottom right. We get to learn all the cool things about that. We get to see the Arizona statues. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt for the kids to find the 2 statues from Arizona in the Capitol. This is from last year. There's Alexia in front of the National Library. So we get to go in there and get to see all the really cool reading rooms. They have a Gutenberg Bible on display, one of 3 in the world still left from the original print. So really cool things like that. In the Capitol, last year we didn't go in the Capitol. That's just the cool ceiling that they have at the National Mall. It's just amazing artwork. But 2 years ago we did. So they do mix it up. If you ended up going both years, you get a little different experience. They don't just do one cookie cutter trip, and they will sculpt the trip to however we want. So if we really want to go to these things, they will make it happen. Some other things we did was the Holocaust Museum. That was really powerful for our kids. Even the 7th graders who hadn't studied the Holocaust yet, because that's in 8th grade, they were blown away by the amount of history and stuff in there. That's one of our 8th graders that went 2 years ago. His name's Caden. There's Alan. You'll see him in a lot of pictures, the one in the top left. This is the FDR Memorial, MLK. We get to do all those cool ones in one kind of walk path. One thing we do a lot of is walking, and we walked like 12 miles last year in one day. Yeah, we get our steps in. We get to do like the cool Jefferson Memorial. There's Alan doing the funny pose, because that's Alan. But some cool things like that. Arlington Cemetery, another huge part of our national history and current history. We get to go see the changing of the guard and the cool atmosphere of that. Just really gives the kids a good respect for our nation's history. We even place a wreath anywhere that is currently available. So we usually have ended up doing the Challenger Memorial the last 2 years, but if you have the opportunity, you can even place one at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers if they give you that respect and opportunity. Other things we visit, a lot of the memorials. We do the Lincoln, we do the big ones. It's a 3-day trip, 3.5. We get there usually late Tuesday. We leave late Friday, so we don't get back here till about 9 o'clock on Friday. So we really pack the trip in. And we go from about 6:30. We usually wake up in the morning. Is that one? Yeah. And we're not back till about 10 to the hotel. So it's a busy, busy trip. Some really cool other photos. We do Mount Vernon too as an option on the trip. We did that both years. That one was a lot of walking. But awesome memorial to George Washington. Living monument too, so they run the farm and everything there is completely going just like it was 200 and almost 50 years ago now. The 9/11 memorial at the Pentagon. That's a really moving one for our children too. Our kids, especially the kids coming through 7th and 8th grade now, weren't alive during this. They're kind of the first ones. So for them to really learn this, where it happened and understand it is great. The whole time we're there, and he's not in any of our pictures, we have a tour guide that tells us everything you could ask. You can ask any question you want, and they got an answer, and they're great at it, because that's pretty much all they do for World Strides. There's Alessia and Francesca in the top right. We do the cool Washington Monument, which all the kids were excited because it was in the Spider-Man movie right when we were doing this. So they were all like, oh, that's in the movie. World War II Memorial, that one's really cool. Big open panoramic shot there. Arizona, I think you're taking a picture in front of the Arizona one in that bottom picture, way down in the corner, you're in there. Francesca is taking it. The other museums, all the Smithsonians and stuff like that. You got the Hope Diamond. That's a really huge stone that was donated. Cool museums like that. Usually we get about 3 hours to ourselves to pick which Smithsonian we want to go to. So as a group, we can split off into smaller groups with a chaperone and visit whatever museum we want, as long as you want to do the walking. And these ones are in there because usually the kids are so tired, all they do in between is sleep. They nap, they sleep. It's hard to wake them up on the Friday morning because they're so tired at that point. As far as what it is, it's about $2,216 right now. They do give us a discount because of our district, and that's very helpful. It does pay for everything, though. It's a completely inclusive trip. The only thing they need to bring money for is souvenirs. That's it. Everything else is covered, including insurance. World Strides does offer awesome scholarships, too, based on family income. Anything from $80,000 total family income and below, they will give you free scholarship towards your trip. Straight through the company, it's a simple phone call. Meals are included. We usually have a great breakfast at buffets and stuff like that for breakfast at the hotel, and then lunch we get cool vouchers so the kids don't have to worry about money or anything. I just give them a ticket and they go and pick their lunch. It's usually at a food court, and dinner is usually more pre-selected. There's you guys eating breakfast. You guys didn't know I took that one. You guys are half asleep. Usually it's at a pretty general place like Boston Market, Panda Express, stuff like that. More the lunches are food courts. Dinners are more pre-planned where we put a pre-order and we get there and it's already ready for us. So everything's handled great. We ate lunch at Le Enfant Plaza, a beautiful food court. We had lunch another day last year at Grand Union Station, sorry. We had to walk from there to the Capitol building. Accommodations and safety. Our hotels are at the top-notch hotels, pretty much where you would want to stay if you were planning this trip yourself. You also get a pool guaranteed, so the kids usually spend 1 or 2 nights at the pool. That's one of the things they look forward to. There's a hotel coordinator there to handle all our hotel issues, and there are night chaperones to handle any issues at night. So after 10 o'clock, doors are shut, lights are off, and there's a night chaperone in the hallway, one for every 10 rooms, that has a report given to me every morning based on if anything needs correcting or addressing in the morning, right at breakfast. So insurance is also included. Any injuries are handled quickly and effectively. If anyone's sick, they will bus them back to the hotel and they will call out a doctor. They have a program called Doctors on Call right to the hotel to help the kid prescribe any medications that may be needed. If it's a major injury like a broken leg, Sophie told me they had one a couple years ago, they will fly the student home after taking medical care, all expenses paid. So insurance is completely included. Hotels, almost at the end here. Beautiful hotels. That's the exact hotel we stayed at last year, and it was amazing. I mean, it's better than most hotels I've ever stayed in. And then miscellaneous. The only money they want to bring is souvenirs. So like being a social studies teacher, went crazy, and my fiance wasn't happy with me. I spent like $200 last year for stuff for my classroom, but they buy the hats and stuff. Oh, I got that amazing American flag hoodie. I'll wear that. She bought me a hoodie because she didn't think I would wear it. It's an American flag. And so they have street vendors, usually a cheaper alternative, but World Strides even has partnerships with souvenir shops where they give us discounts. So they're that big of a company. They're the biggest known name for the DC trip. There's other companies that do it, but they kind of do it the best. There's a great, easy ways to sign up, and it's in invitations. So the students get those invitations, look at them, they can sign up online, phone, by mail. You only have to pay usually $50 down to hold your spot. That's all. That's the only part that's non-refundable, as long as you cancel by a certain date. If you wait longer to cancel, some of it is held, just like most travel companies. You can also call and ask for scholarship before you sign up, so parents can get any help they need. As a school of Desert Spirit, we did do a couple bigger fundraisers last year and a few smaller ones, but we're definitely looking to expand and do more fundraisers this year to make it easier on our families. And then, any questions? As I said, this is more for my parent presentation, but it works for here too. So, do you guys have any questions for us?
I've been there.
Yeah.
I took an 18-year-old who was not happy with that either.
12, 13, didn't like it either.
But
loved it.
What were some of the things that the students were just in awe of? I mean, what were some of the big impacts?
What was probably your favorite?
I really liked the health museum just because I had learned about that just in 8th grade.
Right.
To go and see that. You speak in the microphone.
Oh.
We want to make sure everybody out in YouTube land hears you.
I think it's ready to go.
Just hold it. Just talk.
Oh, well, my most favorite part was probably the Holocaust Museum, because just learning about that in 8th grade last year and actually going to see like the museum and all the facts it held and the things in the museum was, it was cool to see after just learning about it and considering what it was very moving.
Mr. Smith, how many students had the opportunity to go this year?
We started with 10 signed up last year. We ended up taking 6. 2 moved. They just weren't able to go, which I still offer it. My first year, one of our students moved at the end of 7th grade, but she had signed up, so she went to 8th grade at a different school, but she had paid the money, and I said, I will take you. And so there was no issues there. She was good. The first year, we didn't do any fundraising, though, so last year with the fundraising, we were able to take 6, but we'd like to, our magic number that we really want to get to is at least 10. It's kind of our goal, and then we can build from there.
So is this your second year doing this?
This will be our 3rd year going. The 2018 trip at the end of the school year this year will be our 3rd year going.
Okay. And how many did you have going the first year you went?
We took 2 8th graders. So we started small, but then the word of mouth spread. They came back and said it was really awesome, like you guys should go. And so it's growing slowly, but we're getting there.
Well, I mean, that's just such a great opportunity. I would think that people would be banging down the door to, you know, especially if you're doing fundraisers. And that's, you know, for a tour like that, that's a very good price.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Wow. We wish you the best of luck for next year too, and I hope more, you know, take advantage of this and sign up, because it really is quite an education. There's nothing more than actually being there, you know, and seeing
the history.
Seeing history itself. So thank you so much for doing that.
All right, thank you for your time, and thank you everyone back here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are at our consent agenda. So are there any items that our board members would like pulled? Okay. Mr. Aldama, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You're so quiet. All right, I'll need a motion then to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
We have to skip this
Okay.
one.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. All right, we don't have any reports or information items at this time, so we're going to have to recess until 6 o'clock.
Mrs. Wilson, if I may, you can certainly proceed if the board chooses to item 7C, and then we can recess at 6 o'clock and then go back to A and B if you choose to utilize the time in that fashion.
Okay, all right. I don't know if the reason for that is we had advertised that we would be doing a public hearing at 6 o'clock, and we have to follow that timeline where we'll be looking at the expenditure budget and allocation of monies related to the 1.06 teacher salary increase. So we will move to item 7, action items. A.
Mrs. Wilson, we cannot act on A or B until we have the hearing, so I'll, with your permission, go to C.
C, good. All right.
Thank you. Mrs. Wilson, members of the governing board, at this time it is recommended that the governing board approve the new job description for English as a second language instructor for GESD parents.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I have one. Is this a position that already exists and we're just clarifying it? No.
It's a new position. It will be grant funded. And it's actually not a full-time position. It will be it's extra duty pay. So it's for current employees that can work a little bit extra.
And this is all paid through Title I?
Title III.
Title III, okay.
So how many positions would there be open for this? Are you going to have one at every site, or?
We need to use the microphone, please.
However many they can fund.
All right, and then they would be held at specific sites?
Correct. satellite locations, and I believe it's free to parents who want to participate.
Is there an actual curriculum for that, or do they make it up as they go?
Yes.
I asked because I did that for a couple of years over in my last district, and it was exciting. It was fun because the parents were very grateful, and I learned a lot too. I learned how to speak some Spanish.
Miss Mealy, if you don't mind, can you take a microphone and just give an overview of the program, please?
Good evening. What our intent is that we're going to try to connect the locations in conjunction with our family resource centers that we have currently so that we can be able to do kind of regions of service for open to any parents who want to come. That way we can kind of connect some child supervision with it. We currently just kind of do it a little bit, but we wanted to really do an effective ESL program for parents with certified teachers so that we know that we're delivering. We've had a high request for ESL classes from our parents, and we just thought that this would be a good way to make it available to everyone. So as soon as we get the people hired, we'll make a schedule of classes and have them posted on the website and advertise, and then people will call in and reserve spots. So there'll be lots of different dates and opportunities for parents to participate.
Nice. Does anyone have any?
Great, ask Mr. Aldama.
Mr. Aldama, do you have any questions? Not there? Is he there?
No, none at all.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I'll need a motion to adopt our 7C.
I'll move to approve the job description for an English as a second language instructor for parents.
And I'll second that.
Okay, Ms. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mr. Aldama?
Aye.
Okay, and the chair votes aye, so the motion passes. All right, let's see.
We can do D, right?
We can do D, yes.
All right. We'll move then to item 7D.
Mrs. Wilson, members of the Governing Board, it is recommended the Governing Board approve the revised annual financial report for fiscal year 2016-17 as presented. Mr. Barragan, anything you want to add to that?
Madam President, members of the board, I'd love to give you a 10-minute explanation. I don't think I'll be able to pull that off.
You talk slowly.
There's minor changes in the AFR to reflect just changes in 3 different areas. As you can see by the dollar amounts on your agenda summary, they're minimal, and those were just clerical errors that we wanted to correct when we became aware of them. So it's just before you to make those adjustments. You can see 3,600, 1,400, and then a posting correction. And so again, it's just, we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly, and we caught that error and wanted to bring it to your attention and for a revision. Other than these changes, the AFR is still intact and accurate.
Any questions? Please.
I'll move to approve the revised AFR report for the years 2016-17.
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mr. Aldama?
Aye.
Okay, and the chair votes aye, so the motion passes. I think we've got 5 minutes left. We can probably take a look at, we can go on with 8.
You can go to 8 if you choose to, yes.
Let's do 8, future meetings.
Mrs. Wilson, members of the Governing Board, we initially had planned to present the Arizona Merit Assessment results this evening, but we initially thought that Board Member Smith was going to have to leave early today, and also with Mr. Aldama and Mrs. Pimentel out of town, we decided to move that presentation to the November 9th meeting, and we'll do so if the board would like us to proceed in that manner.
Anyone have anything to add?
Works for me.
Okay. It's fine. Okay. Then we are at item B, agenda item requests. Are there any items that board members would like placed on agendas at this time? Mr. Aldama, any?
No, thank you. None.
Okay. All right, hearing none. Mr. Quintana, did you want to do your superintendent report?
Yes, Mrs. Wilson, members of the governing board. I'm trying to go in some sort of order here. First and foremost, per guidance from the governing board, Mrs. Cindy Segata-Jones and I had the opportunity to attend last week Vice Mayor Hughes' community event. And then we also had the opportunity with our families to attend the Kiwanis Steak Fry on Saturday. And that those two events provided an opportunity for Mrs. Segata-Jones to meet members of the community and members of organizations that support the school district. So we were able to do that, and we plan to continue to attend events so that Mrs. Segata-Jones can meet individuals in the community. On Saturday morning, my grandson and I had the opportunity to attend a service project that was taking place over at the Jack Garden. And although I did not go dressed and prepared to physically work because I had my grandson, I couldn't help from pitching in and sharing my opinions about certain things. I know that governing board member Bartels was there as well, and we had probably about 10, 15 students and about 6, 7 parents, a couple of teachers. Mr. Baldenegro was giving of his time and helped install some benches, and the people from Lowe's were there and donated materials, and also they put up some shade structures and some other things along those lines. So that was just a nice event, and the kids did actively participate in shoveling concrete and moving dirt and raking and doing some things. So that was very nice. And then I want to thank Mrs. Teresa Pasillas, the art teacher at Jack School, for making the student art that is behind us available and adding to the environment here in our governing board meeting.
All right, well, we have 2 minutes left.
I'll take it all.
All right.
Well, I'll just give you a report that Ms. Bartels and I yesterday evening went to Menzendick and were able to see the community program that they're doing over there called Rachel's Challenge. And you know, I think it's a good challenge for kindness. And I guess, you know, we mentioned yesterday when we were there at the evening that we would like a report further on, you know, after the year ends to see how the club goes and to see if there were any life-changing moments, you know, in our students' lives. So that was an interesting, you know, event last night. And then earlier in the week, I know Ms. Wilson was there. I saw her, and I were at the honor assembly at Horizon, and I was glad to see that they recognized our AZ Merit and benchmark students, you know, that were highly proficient, and you know, I'm glad that that's there. And then yesterday, I think we received an email notifying us that that career program at Landmark is going to be recognized by ADEC. And so I think that's really nice, you know, that we've had that community support in our schools.
Oh.
Okay, do you want to keep going?
Do you have a quick one?
Nope.
No?
Mrs. Wilson, members of the board, I also had the opportunity to attend the awards event, as I believe you did, and I saw you there, and I was pleased with not only the manner in which it was carried out, but the large parent turnout and support that they had.
I think at this time there's a lot of schools that are doing their awards assemblies, and so I just want to say congratulations to all those students that are receiving awards. And from what I've seen from a couple there, those awards assemblies are so nice. The kids are really look forward to it. The parents love it, and it's nice for the students to not only receive the award, but for others to see their friends and family receive, and so congratulations to all those students and to the schools.
I think you guys managed to hit 6 o'clock.
I did. Okay. All We are at the public hearing now. And as I said before, this is a public hearing on a proposed revision of the fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure budget and allocation of monies related to the 1.06 teacher salary increase pursuant to Session Laws 2017, Chapter 305. And members of the audience are invited to make comments and ask questions during this public hearing.
Mr. Barragan?
Madam President.
We need to move to recess.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we need to make a motion.
We'll move to recess.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Mr. Barragan?
Madam President, members of the board, as you well stated, Madam President, this is a statutory requirement which is new from what we're used to. Usually we do a hearing notice at the beginning of the year in July. This year, because of the 1.06 increase to teachers, part of those requirements is that we have a hearing. And basically it's to ensure the public that the teachers that the monies that we're receiving is specific for teachers. And so we're looking at about a $10,000 increase from the last time we proposed the budget or adopted the budget. And so the figures that you see on page 2 of 8 in your packets reflects the amounts needed to comply with the increase. And so it's more of a formality. And so we wanted just to remind everyone that those monies would be made available to our teachers. We're looking at about November, December, assuming that the state funds us in those time frames, and then get that money to our teachers. And I'm happy to entertain any questions from you or if there are any questions from the public.
Are there any questions from the board members?
Just one observation. It really is only a difference of $10,000 basically?
Madam President, members of the board, yes, we wanted to capture anyone that we did not capture when we first started this process. And so it is only an increase of $10,000 from the last time. And so any new hires that may be coming from other Arizona public schools, we take that information into consideration and increased accordingly.
Sorry, it just sounds really, really ugly after seeing what occurred in the capital area this past week.
All right. So we will invite any comments, questions from visitors. Don't be shy. Just step right up to the microphone.
Roll call ask. Make sure Mr. Aldama is in.
Mr. Aldama, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. All right, then we will adjourn the public hearing and reconvene to our regular meeting.
Do we do a motion for that?
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
I'll move to reconvene.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, I believe Ms. Bartelli, you didn't have a chance for your report. Did you have anything to say?
We could do it at the end.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We have to do it at 7. I'm just really out of it today. Okay. All right. We are at the action item 7A, revised expenditure budget.
Yes, Mrs. Wilson, members of the governing board, it is recommended the governing board approve revision number 1 of fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure budget as presented.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the revised 2017-18.
He's going to do a presentation.
Oh, never mind.
We can cut the presentation
It's just my turn.
This thing just threw us all off.
Yeah. Madam President, members of the board, and so I'm going to throw you off. I'm going to attempt my presentation a little bit different than I normally do. I want to point out the increases historically from ADM and to where we are today. In 2014, we increased our ADM about 271 students from the prior year. In 2015, we actually took a decrease of about 37 students. In 2016, a loss of about another 20 students. The last year that ended, we took a huge decrease, 451 students. So our 100th day is in January. Our 100th day information from last year is what we used to build this year's budget. When you compare a 100th day ADM to our 40th day count from this year, that's an additional 461 students that are no longer in our district. So in 2 years, we've lost 913 students. Let me demonstrate what that looks like. This here is our current school year. This purple line is where it was in 2014. You can see this gap. You can see that this trend more likely might stay flat for the remainder of the year. If it does not, we will have to come to the board again for another revision. When we talk about that 461 student loss, or no longer in our district, you're talking about a $2 million reduction in the current school year. Now, when I refer to the $2 million, I'm giving you in the most simplistic way. There are other factors, but when you take the numbers of students that are no longer here to what we get in the basic funding formula, you're looking at about $2 million. Again, it's a little bit more complicated, but in the simplest form. On the left-hand side is the budget that was adopted by the board back in July. Revised number 1 is the changes that are reflected today. I talked about a $2 million reduction. The actual reduction in today's budget is more like a $1.6 million reduction. And you can see the biggest reason that we didn't reduce the budget by that $2 million is because our budget balance carry forward from the new year, from the old year into the new year, was higher than we had expected. When we had talked about it in the AFR, we had pointed out 2 reasons why. As a result of some vacancy savings, and more specifically MOUs, where we're saving a little bit more money because we're not providing them with medical and dental insurance and some other insurance, we saw a huge savings there, as well additional savings in utilities that we had not anticipated. So it was a good thing. Otherwise, that reduction of $2 million would have been a straight reduction of $2 million. So some of that is somewhat mitigated by those 2 increases or savings in the MOUs from last year into this year, as well as utility savings. The override amount, without complicating it too much, we believe we were going to have about $9.4 million, and that's a calculation based on your enrollment. Because our enrollment has decreased, you can see that the override that is approved by our voters has to drop down to about 9.1. So again, it's really that $2 million plus the changes to the M&O formula. The real or the net decrease is about 1.6 million. So you're looking at about a $70 million M&O budget. Ironically, we expected a decrease in our capital budget, but because of fiscal year 17, the expenses we thought we were going to incur were actually less. So you can see we made some gains in the budget balance carry forward from the old year into this year. So we were, frankly thankful that we did not spend as much as we had anticipated. So there was a little bump there. You're going to hear some of my final thoughts very similar to what they were when we did the AFR. I want to be consistent in the message. I want to reiterate those points for the board's sake and for the community's sake. So I apologize if they do sound somewhat redundant. In fiscal year 17, there was legislative language that protected school districts. So if their enrollment decreased, they could default to the prior year's 100th day. In 2018, which is this school year, there are no financial safeguards from the legislature. Any financial safeguards have to come from us. We have to plan for that. This also requires that we make those reductions in the current school year. One of the conversations that we've had in the executive team and members of the cabinet, there may be reductions in grants moving forward for various reasons. One, federal changes, but also a potential decrease in student enrollment, and or because less services are being provided to those students, right? Less enrollment, potentially less services being provided. So I did not want to not capture that piece of information because those amounts we all have to take into consideration to see what that impact is going to be to the district. Capital funding needs to be a priority for us. It needs to be a priority for stakeholders in Arizona, and as you've heard me mention, I personally believe that there should be a state of an emergency when it comes to capital funding. Again, I want to reiterate that. Increase in enrollment must be our priority. Increase academic achievement, which we're moving in the right direction there, and I have no doubt that we're going to continue that progress in subsequent years. Customer service, family engagement, marketing and advertising campaign. I think in a board memo, we've communicated that we've contracted with Applied Economics to conduct a demographic study. From my perspective, from a business perspective, that's going to be critical as we look at the district and sustainability over the next year, 5, 10, and 20 years. And to me, to us, that's going to be the foundation of a plan for the district. Classroom site fund, we know that expires if it does not get renewed in 2021. We spend about $2.2 million in the base salary alone, and so if those monies are not extended, that becomes another financial challenge for us in 2021. Because our enrollment has decreased in this year, that automatically is going to decrease the amount of monies that we receive from Classroom Site Fund in next year's allocation, because for that purpose, prior year ADM is what's used. I know you've heard my counterpart from Peoria at the ASBA conference talk about everything is prior year except the base level amount formula. So please know that next year, the amounts that we receive from Classroom Site Fund is going to be lower. If Classroom Site Fund or Prop 301 is not extended, this will be a financial cliff for all Arizona school districts and charter schools. Classroom dollars report, we will appear to be inefficient. Prop 206 requires that minimum wage increases every year. Implementation on January 1st, we estimate about $64,000, and that's from $10 to $10.50. That amount will always grow every year thereafter. Salary and wage compression will be an ongoing issue. We've talked about it at length 2-3 board meetings ago, and that will be an ongoing problem. Decrease in enrollment is a decrease in non-classroom spending, and so again, we're going to appear to be inefficient in our operations as long as our enrollment continues to decrease, and monies for Prop 206 will make that gap even further. Madam President, members of the board, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Aldama, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Mr. Madigan, can you explain the reason maybe why we've lost so many students?
Madam President, Member Aldama, if you recall several board meetings ago, I looked at surrounding charter schools. 2 in particular, at least that have been on our radar, account for about 300 or so of those students. I want to say 360 of those students. At this point, I can't account for the other 100. They could be somewhere else. I've just focused on the 2 that are what I would say closest to the district. One not too far from here, downtown Glendale, and the other charter school at 67th Avenue in Camelback. There could be others. I just have been focused on those 2.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, to continue on that, could it also be, neighborhoods, aging out? Like I myself, I have 3 children. However, they're no longer in our school, but I have not moved out of the community to give, make that house available to a younger family. Could some of that be part of it?
Madam President, members of the board, I can draw a direct correlation between our loss of students and those 2 charter schools' increase in their enrollment. I can't account for those 100. Doesn't mean that that might be the case as far as, the birth rates have impacted the district, where they're no longer in a K through 8 age group.
Right.
What I will say is when the demographic study is completed, it will project that particular information for the next several years, which I do believe is the reason why our strategic plan moving forward needs to be around that plan, because it gives us an idea of what housing might look like, birth rates might look like, increase in private schools or charter schools in the area, And that's why it's important to, every other year or so, update that report so that you have accurate data and we make informed decisions.
Mrs. Bartels, members of the governing board, that demographic study will help us answer some of these questions.
When's the last time that we've done the demographic study?
Four.
Madam President, members of the board, I believe, I want to say 2010, we made a small revision 2 years ago, and then the most current one is currently being worked on by Applied Economics, and shortly after our 40th day, we provided them with all the relevant data that they need to begin that work. At a minimum, I do believe it should be done every other year, depending on what's happening within our community, as far as new schools, home building, but I would say at a minimum, probably every other year.
Mrs. Wilson, members of the governing board, once that demographic study is completed, and based on the conversations we have started in our executive team that Mr. Barragan referenced, we do plan to respectfully recommend to the governing board that we have study sessions beginning in January and that they be ongoing, so that we can not only look at and in a deeper manner the results of that demographic study, but also share with the governing board and receive direction on some of the recommendations that we are producing to address some of the financial challenges that Mr. Barragan has referenced this evening.
You know, I'm just amazed all the time at how many charter schools are popping up. And I know most states have a cap on how many charter schools can be opened. But what are you hearing, and I know you probably can't put this in stone, but what are you hearing from other districts? Are they having a problem as well with their membership, their ADM?
Madam President, members of the board, I can provide this information to you at the next board memo. The School Facilities Board did a demographic study statewide and looked at the top 10 districts that are increasing in their enrollment and the top 10 school districts that are decreasing in their enrollment. And we were part of the top 10 in decreasing enrollment. I'm happy to share that with you. I don't know those off the top of my head. I think that's a valuable piece of information. Mm-hmm. What I do know, may be perhaps to Board Member Bartels' question, Glendale Union is increasing, and they are part of the top 10 districts growing. And so I'm happy to share that with you through the board memo, and then you can look at those, because I don't remember those names off the top of my head.
Well, there's not as many charter schools that are servicing high school age students as there are elementary.
Madam President, members of the board, that would be a good question. And I think that will be part of the demographic study to see how many 9 through 12 private or charter institutions there are within our district boundaries and see what their capture rate might be. Mm-hmm. That is a good piece of information to look at. But and so that could explain part of the reason why Glendale Union, or the other reasons, there could be other reasons.
Marching band.
Sports, extracurricular activities. But I do believe, again, to answer some of those questions, and the superintendent mentioned, when we get to that point, we do want Applied Economics to actually do that full presentation to answer those questions, because I do believe that we cannot look at this issue from one year to the next. We do believe, and we've had discussions as recently as this morning, that we need to have a short-term plan, an intermediate plan, and a long-term plan. And so those all have to really be in place, because there will be a lot of moving parts over the next several years for various reasons.
I know we've had the conversation about how we need to be, innovative, and we need to be competitive, so maybe we could get just a small report on some of the things that we are looking at doing in our district that would put us in that competitive market.
So, Madam President, members of the board, to that point, we believe that might fall in not short term, but immediate plan. In other words, maybe in the next 18 to 24 months, because those are things that we are exploring, and you think about implementation, and so there will need to be a planning stage, and that those decisions will be more likely driven by that demographic study, and then what we believe as a district are our priorities, because again, in a short-term goal, an intermediate plan, and then a long-term range plan definitely need to be established, and I can assure you that we're having those conversations on how to be competitive, what can we do to have a higher capture rate within students within our community so that we avoid or mitigate these type of situations in the future.
I have one other question. It's a cash flow question for you. So if it's a current year funding, so I'm assuming our payments are going to, be lower, than what you were expecting, and then they've been late. And so how is this going to be affecting our cash flow?
Great question. Madam President, members of the board, to give you an idea, for Glendale in particular, and Sarah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we get an IOU of about $18 million, $17 to $18 million, monies that are due this year, but we don't get paid in the subsequent year. And so historically, that's been a cash flow issue for Glendale. To add a decrease in enrollment, we believe that that's going to decrease cash flow, and we've been trying very hard to improve cash flow. So that's going to be a balancing act, and definitely going to make that challenge more difficult for sure. Just remember, we have to borrow money, and when we borrow money, it costs our taxpayers that interest. And so that's something that we've attempted to avoid. We had an idea last year that didn't work out, but we try to mitigate the cost to our taxpayers as best as we can. But you're talking about $18 million for Glendale and almost $1 billion statewide for every other school district in the state. And so we're not the only ones in this situation. It needs to be our state leaders need to address that to avoid that additional burden to our local taxpayers.
If I understand part of the question, or correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Barragan last 2 weeks and this morning reiterated as well that based on some other strategies or things that we have done, if our enrollment remains as is right now and we don't lose a significant number of students between now and the end of the year financially, we can manage this year. Can you expound on that, Mr. Barragan? I think you can state it better than I can.
Madam President, members of the board, if we stay flat, in other words, Russell, can you put that into a slide view? In other words, we can manage the 461 student loss this year as a short-term solution, but if our enrollment decreases more between now and our 100th day to a significant number, that will be a lot more pressure right now for the district. If we can stay at the 461, at a minimum stay flat, we can manage this year. We'll have to make some changes, but we'll be able to manage it. We have to be prepared in the subsequent year that if this trend continues, that we manage that and we're not in this situation or in a 450, 460 student situation mid-year. So I hope that answered the question, Superintendent Quintana.
Would you say that after the 100th day we get a boost in enrollment sometimes?
Historically, for our district, the 100th day is higher than the 40th day, historically speaking. I'll have to look at...
I mean, yeah, after the 100th day.
100th day is week 22. You can see at least historically what has occurred. Maybe a slight increase.
Not
but
a
the times are
guarantee.
different though too.
Yeah.
What I would say historically has been a pattern, I don't believe the historical factor is in play anymore. It's my personal opinion. I just believe that with some of the competition, it becomes a game changer. And so, at least until we have that demographic study, I believe that's a little bit more harder to predict, and at least I'm going to hope that at a minimum we stay flat. Obviously, we'd love that number to increase, but even if we were to increase 50, 100 students over 2 years, we're still down a pretty significant number of
Yeah, well, I know they probably, you know, as a teacher, I just always seem to see an increase in enrollment. I get a lot of new kids after the 100th day. And then, of course, they don't come back after the first year. So I don't know if we're getting the charter schools after they decide they don't want them anymore. I don't know what happens there, but it just seems that there's, I don't know, it's just, you know, different.
Madam President, members of the board, just to maybe use the 2017 as a line, as a point of reference to at least come to my conclusion, is if we increase students, it wasn't significant enough to, you know, we're still down 451 students. That's pretty significant. So at least based on last year's trend, I would be shocked if there was an increase significant to somewhat absorb that 461.
Yeah. Any more questions? All right, I'll need a motion to approve item 7A.
I'll move to approve revision 1 to fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure budget.
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Bartels?
Aye.
Mr. Aldama?
Aye.
Okay, the chair votes aye, so the motion passes. All right, we are at item 7B, the allocation of 1.06 teacher salary increase monies.
Mrs. Wilson, members of the governing board, it is recommended the governing board approve the allocation of monies related to the intended 1.06% teacher salary increase pursuant to Session Law 2017, Chapter 305, 33 as presented.
Okay, any questions? Okay, I'll need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the allocation of the 1.06% teacher salary increase monies.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Smith, how do you vote?
I'm going to vote aye, but again, I think with this vote, we just need to remind the staff that the money doesn't come until we get it.
We have sent out several notices, but we can do so again.
Okay, Ms. Bartels?
Aye.
Mr. Aldama?
Aye.
Okay, the chair votes aye, so the motion passes. All right, we have already voted on C and D and 8A and B. And Mr. Quintana has given his superintendent report, as has Ms. Smith. I have pretty much. Ms. Bartels, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank the campuses that did invite us out. I did get to go, and I did wear appropriate attire to move gravel and help carry benches over at Jack's school. It turned out amazing, and it is just such a wonderful project over there. And watching the kids helping, they were into it. And then the Rachel's Challenge last night. I know that the students that'll be involved in that, one thing, because I know that part of that goal is for that to ripple out beyond the school walls. So a suggestion I would have is take advantage of your social media page over there at Menzendick and have the students telling stories and putting that out there, because I don't know about any other parent, but when my kids are on there and I see something great, I'm on there sharing it. And you know, how much better can you get that out there? You know, parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents are all going to be spreading that word about how great their family member is. So I'd love to see more invitations to events. I know we have a lot of fall festivals going on, so have a lot of fun.
Mr. Aldama?
Can you hang up, please?
Mr. Aldama, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I apologize. I just want to remind everybody, invite everybody to City of Glendale's 2017 game night at Murphy Park from 5 to 8 p.m. Friday, October 27th.
When is it?
Tomorrow.
All right.
Tomorrow, I believe, right, Mr. Aldama?
That is correct. Friday, October 27th.
Yeah, tomorrow. Okay, thank you. All right, if no one has anything else to say or comment on?
Yeah, I was looking at our future meetings a little bit closer. I don't see anything on here about like our superintendent evaluations anywhere.
Yeah, we had...
Mrs. Smith, I did have a brief conversation with Mrs. Wilson, and I'm certainly prepared to give the update whenever, due to some of these circumstances that we had, those were temporarily postponed, but I can do my report and we can do the evaluation whenever the board chooses.
Okay, just want to make sure it gets on our future meetings.
Are you going to give a report on your goals then? Did you want Mr. Quintana to do that? Do a report on goals?
Yeah, we need to, yeah.
Okay.
So it should be both his personal goals as well as the district from last year's, correct? Oh, God.
Well, let's,
so we'll put it on future agenda. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'll need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.